Hi everyone, welcome to our Neet Bio Prep channel. Today we are going to learn the Cell the Unit of Life chapter. Let's start the session. Cell the unit of life. It means a life did not exist without a single cell. All living organisms possess a life and are made up of the basic unit structure, and without no, it is called as a cell. And coming to the Ramachandran, G.N. Ramachandran, an outstanding figure in the field of the protein structure, was the founder of the Madras School of the conformational analysis of biopolymers. His discovery of the triple helix structure of the collision, published in Nature 1954, and his analysis of the allowed conformations of protein through the use of the Ramachandran plot rank among the most outstanding contributions in the structural biology. He was born on the October 8, 1922, in a small town not far from the Cochin on the southwestern coast of India. His father was a professor of mathematics at a local college, and though had considerable influence in shaping Ramachandran's interest in mathematics. After completing his school years, Ramachandran graduated in 1942 as a top ranking student in the BSc Physics course of the University of Madras. He received a PhD from the Cambridge University in 1949. While at the Cambridge, Ramachandran met Linus Pauling and was deeply influenced by his publication on model of the alpha helix and beta sheet structures that directed his attention to the solving the structure of the collision. He passed away at the age of the 78 on April 7, 2001. Here is the explanation that G.N. Ramachandran was born on the October 8, 1922, and he was a founder of the Madras School, and also he was discovered the triple helix structure of the collision. It was published in the 1954. He graduated in the 1942 and received a PhD in 1949. He was died at the age of the 78 on April 2001. When you look around, you see both living and non-living things. You may When you look around, you see both living and non-living things. You must wonder and ask yourself, what is it that makes an organism living? Or you must have wondered and asked yourself, what is it that makes an organism living? Or what is it that inanimate things does not have, with a living thing has? The answer to this is the presence of the basic unit of the life, the cell in all living organisms. All organisms are composed of the cells. Some are composed of the single cell and are called as a unicellular organisms, while other like us are composed of the many cells are called as a multicellular organisms. We can see a lot of things around us like living and non-living things. A living thing can survive due to the presence of the cell. Without a cell, life won't exist. Each and every organisms are composed of the cells. Some are composed of the single cell are called as a unicellular organisms, for example, amoeba and diatoms. For many organisms are composed of the many cells like us are called as the multicellular organisms. Examples plants, animals, and also it includes human beings. What is a cell? Unicellular organisms are capable of independent existence and performing the essential functions of life. Anything less than a complete structure, cell does not ensure independent living. Hence, cell is a fundamentally structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Anthony van Leeuwenhoek first saw and described the live cell. Robert Brown later discovered the nucleus. The invention of the microscope and its improvement, leading to the electron microscope, revealed all the structural details of the cell. Unicellular organisms do all the essential functions of life. If a cell has incomplete structure, it does not ensure a independently living. Means unicellular organisms independent extents. It is not dependent. Thus, we all know that cell is a fundamentally structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Robert Hooke studied and discovered the cell from the thin silica of cork. But unfortunately, it was the dead cell which was discovered by the Robert Hooke. The living cell was discovered by the Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, first person who observed a few living cells capable of moving, such as bacteria, protozoans, spermatozoans, and red blood cells, under his own designed microscope. In 1838, Matthias Kleeden, a German botanist, examined large number of the plants and observed that all plants are composed of different kinds of the cells which form the tissues of the plant. At about the same time, Theodor Swan, in 1839, a German zoologist, studied different types of the animal cells and reported that cells had a thin outer layer which is today known as the plasma membrane. He also concluded, based on his studies on the plant tissues, that the presence of the cell wall is a unique character of the plant cells. On the basis of this, Swan proposed the hypothesis that the bodies of plants and animals are composed of the cells and products of the cells. Clayton and Swan together formulated the cell theory. This theory, however, did not explain as to how new cells are formed. Rudolf Virchow in 1855 first explained that cells divide and new cells are formed from the pre-existing cells. He modified the hypothesis of Schleiden and Swan to give the cell theory a final shape. Cell theory, as understood today, is all living organisms are composed of the cells and products of the cells. All cells arises from the pre-existing cells. In 1838, Matthias Kleeden, a German botanist, he was observed a large number of the plants and said that all plants are composed of the different types of the cells and all cells form the tissues of the plant. We all know that life exists from the cells and next tissues and from the organs and then the organisms. In 1839, Swan, a British geologist, he studied all different types of the animal cells and observed that all animals had the thin outer layer which is known as a plasma membrane. He also concluded, based on the plant tissues, that the presence of the cell wall is a unique characteristic feature of the plant cells. Swan proposed that each and every living organisms, like both plants and animals, are composed of the cells and products of the cells. In Swan and Schleiden together explained the cell theory, but they did not explain how the new cells are formed and how they were divided. But in 1955, Rudolf Virchow first explained that new cells are formed and can be divided in the form of the pre-existing method, means homogeneous cellular e cellular. We all know that all living organisms are composed of the cells and products of the cells, and also all cells arises from the pre-existing cells. Here we come to know that about viruses. They are living and not non-living things. Here is explanation that viruses are expectations to this cell theory because they are not made up of the cells. They are composed of the nucleoprotein particle because they won't be composed of cells. They are not made up of the cells. Therefore, they are not considered either living or non-living. An overview of the cell. You have earlier observed cells in an onion peel and our human cheek. Cells under the microscope. Let us recollect their structure. The onion cell, which is a typically plant cell, has a distinct cell structure, has its outer boundary, and just within it is the cell membrane. The cells of the human cheek have an outer membrane, has a delimiting structure of the cell. Inside each cell is a densely membrane bounded structure called the nucleus. This nucleus contains the chromosomes, which in turn contain the genetic material DNA. Cells that have membrane bounded nuclei are called as a eukaryotic, whereas cells that lack the membrane bounded nucleus are called as a prokaryotic. In both eukaryotic and prokaryotic, a semi-fluid matrix called the cytoplasm occupies the volume of the cell. The cytoplasm is the main area of the cellular activities in both plants and animal cells. Various chemical reactions occurs in it to keep the cell in a living state. Beside the nucleus, the eukaryotic cells have other membrane-bounded distinct structure called organelles like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, mitochondria, microbes, and vacuoles. The prokaryotic cell lacks such membrane bounded organelles. Ribosomes are non membrane bounded organelles found in all cells, both eukaryotic as well as the prokaryotic. Within the cell, ribosomes are found not only in the cytoplasm but also within the two organelles, chloroplast in plants, mitochondria, and on rough endoplasmic reticulum. Animal cells contain another non-membrane bounded organelle called the centrosome which help in cell division. Cell differs greatly in shape, size and activities. For example, mycoplasm, the smallest cell, are also zero point 0.3 micrometers in length, while bacteria could be 3 to 5 micrometer. The largest isolated single cell is the egg of an ostrich. Among multicellular organisms, human red blood cells are about 7.0 micrometer in diameter. Nerve cells are some of the longest cells. Cells also vary greatly in their shape. They may be disc-like, polygonal, columnar, cuboidal, thread-like, or even irregular. The shape of the cell may vary with the function they perform. Here, figure 8.1 diagram showing different types of the cells. Red blood cells, rounded biconcave, white blood cells, amoeboid, columnar epithelial cells, long and narrow, nerve cell, branched and long, tracheate, elongated, mesophyll cells, round and oval. We all know that onion is from the plant. Onion cell has a distinct cell wall which is outer boundary, and within the outer boundary is a cell membrane. But in human cheek, cell have outer membrane has delimiting structure of the cell. Inside each and every cell has a distinct membrane bounded structure called nucleus. Without a nucleus, cell is not alive. Nucleus contain chromosomes, in turns also contain the genetic material which is known as a DNA. Membrane bounded nuclei known as a eukaryotic. Eukaryotic means true nuclei. Lack of membrane bounded nuclei are called as a prokaryotic, means false nucleus. In both eukaryotic and prokaryotic, a semi-fluid matrix called a cytoplasm, which occupies a space in the cell. The cytoplasm is a main area for the different types of the cellular activities in both plants and animal cells. Various chemical reactions occurs in its cytoplasm to keep the cell in the living state. Beside the nucleus, eukaryotic organelles like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, lysosomes, mitochondria, microbes, and also vacuoles, which are absent in the prokaryotic. But in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic, a non-membrane bounded organelle is present that is known as the ribosomes. Ribosomes present in the cytoplasm and also in mitochondria and rough endoplasmic reticulum. Animal cells has non-membrane bounded organelle known as the centrosome. Centrosome helps in the cell division. Size of an cells. Smallest living cell is known as a mycoplasm, which is 0.3 micronanometer in length, while the bacteria is 3 to 5 micrometer. Human red blood cell is 7 micrometer in diameter. The largest isolated single cell is an egg of an ostrich. Nerve cells are some of the longest cell. Shapes of the cells. Red blood cells, rounded biconcave. White blood cells, amoeboid. Columnar epithelial cells, long and narrow. Nerve cells, branched and long. Tracheoids, elongated. Mesophyll cells, round and oval. Today, we studied about what is a cell, cell theory, and overview of the cell. That's it for today class.